Hello and welcome to The Big Fight, a show that is young at 22, the oldest running debate show on Indian news television. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. 8 months ago, when the sensational arrest of Aryan Khan, son of Shah Rukh Khan, was made in Mumbai, claims of solid proof were made by the Narcotics Control Bureau. It was said that even though there was no drugs in Aryan Khan's possession, Khan could be a part of an international drug cartel or a syndicate. This was officially said in courts to deny him bail, that he should not be given bail. Otherwise, he's an influential guy. He'll go outside. He will influence the witnesses. He will influence or try to remove the evidence. Aryan stayed in NCB custody and then later came out on bail. 8 months later, the very same agency now says there is no case against him, no proof whatsoever of his involvement. And we do not have proof beyond reasonable doubt. So what happened in 8 months? From solid proof to no proof. What does this say about an agency like the Narcotics Control Bureau? The chief says of the NCB, now he's admitted that the investigation by Sameer Wankhede was wrong. In fact, action will now be initiated against him. But is it as simple as blaming one person? Remember scenes from 8 months ago. Breathless politics and political commentary, breathless TV news anchors using words like ganjedi, charsi, drakchi. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It's beneath us to use those words. Is this a solid case and there is solid proof of character assassination? More importantly, what was the motive behind this shoddy investigation? BJP versus NCP, BJP versus Aghadi, what? Why should there be no investigation on this front? Does this story end with action against Mr. Wankhede only? Because today it is Wankhede, tomorrow it will be someone else. Is this the job of the NCB? Are they supposed to go after international drug syndicates or 1 gram, 2 gram end users? So the big question on The Big Fight is, do agencies look for soft targets to make themselves look good? Was Aryan Khan targeted because he was Shah Rukh Khan's son? A case where the process itself became the punishment? Did Aryan Khan pay the price for his star status? Also on the show, we will have in just a short moment the counsel for Aryan Khan, Mukul Rohtgi. He's joining us in just a moment from now. Later on the show, we'll also be joined in by Mr. Ryan Karanjewala, who has ably led this fight for Aryan Khan. And we also speak and ask all these questions that I've mentioned right at the very beginning in the preamble to the chief of the Narcotics Control Bureau. That interview will come up in about 40 minutes from now. So let us begin the big fight. I would like to introduce Mr. Mukul Rohtgi. Mr. Rohtgi, thank you very much for speaking to NDTV. My first question to you is, do you feel that now after 8 months, the Narcotics Control Bureau saying that we do not have proof which is beyond reasonable doubt and thus no case is made, do you think it is as simple as blaming Mr. Sameer Wankhede? What was happening in the NCB for 8 months?
Look, Sanket, I don't want to blame any individual officer because I am not privy to which officer did what.
Correct.
Let us look at the NCB as a body or as a unit or as a prosecuting agency. Tall claims were made, as you mentioned, about international drugs, cartels, and as if Aryan Khan was going to earn money by being a member of those cartels. Tall claims which were flights of fancy, which were made only because I think this boy belongs to a celebrity family, and it was as if the agency had kind of some axe to grind that we will show the world what we are doing. There's all kinds of bravado. But the bottom line was, in a drug matter, the drug must be found in the body of the person, in his pocket, in his shoes, or in conscious possession of his car, his house, or whatever, or actual material to show that a man was peddling drugs or was consuming drugs. None of this was available on day one. I had said in the court that this is the case of no evidence. It is in fact, legal lingo or legal jargon to say that there is not enough material to prosecute. It's only a polished way of saying it.
Okay, we seem to be losing that connection on
the
Mr. Mukul
case was
Rohatgi.
completely many factors which contribute.
Yeah, Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, we lost you for a moment there. So you're saying that there was no material evidence in this particular case. My point is, what then happens? See, today it is one officer of the NCB or the NCB agency. Tomorrow there could be another case where the same thing will happen. It's very convenient for an agency to say, we arrested someone, we investigated, we didn't find anything. But by then, a character assassination has happened. By then, lots of reputation damage has happened. Who compensates for that? And more importantly, why should these officers not be punished?
Sanket, the way our legal system works, the system is that the prosecution is not answerable for a wrongful arrest. They are not answerable for a charge sheet being filed or not being filed. That's the way the legal system works. You need to amend the criminal laws. You need to make them more sensitive. You need to make them more attentive. And the fact that if a particular officer does a particular thing, he will not have immunity. Today, under our laws, every government officer, whether of this body or that body, has immunity from any action if he is exercising or discharging official or legal functions. So, the way the system is framed, if there is no answerability, these kind of cases will go on.
But Mr. Rohatgi, do you think that this needs to change urgently? Otherwise, it is so convenient.
100%. You need to change. According to me, 3 things have to be done. 1, change the laws, make it action-oriented. If you take a particular action as an officer, you won't have the shield which is available to every government officer. That you act in public, in discharge of your duties, nothing can be done. So that has to change. Secondly, laws relating to automatic compensation for wrongful arrest and custody should come in so that people don't have to file cases for compensation, which will take 100 years or 50 years. So nobody files those cases. And thirdly, and most important, the Supreme Court must reiterate the law so that it filters down once again. The law is there, namely that power to arrest is not equal to the actual act of arrest. Barely because you have the power does not mean that you exercise it in a flippant or a light-handed manner. The greater the power, the greater the responsibility. So let that law be put down again. Let it be reiterated. Let there be compensation. Let there be a removal of that shield so that, somebody is answerable. Let's not talk about this case. According to me, Aryan Khan was very lucky. He spent only 25 days. Day in and day out, I do cases where people have spent 1 year, 2 years, 3 years as an undertake. Charge sheet filed, not filed for 5 years, 4 years, 3 years. Supplementary charge sheets are being filed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes on and on. There is complete deprivation of liberty. So this case is in fact the lightest of those cases. If you look at spectrum of cases pending in courts, you will be shocked and ashamed to know.
Very well said. And I think, Mr. Rohatgi, from what you are telling us, that should be something which must be debated or learnt from this particular case. Thank you very much, Mr. Mukul Rohatgi, for joining us on The Big Fight. Thank you. Some very concrete points that Mr. Rohatgi has given us to speak about. Let's kickstart the discussion. Mahesh Tapase, he is the chief spokesperson of the NCP. Niranjan Shetty, spokesperson of BJP. Kanika Sadanan is an actor and a lawyer. Aniket Nigam is a criminal lawyer. And we have Akash Banerjee, is a political satirist and host of the Deshbhakt. Thank you very much to all of you. Let me first begin by asking you this question, Mr. Niranjan Shetty. Breathlessness with which the commentary was going on 8 months ago. So what? If he is a big man's son, should he be left off the hook? No, he shouldn't be. But I don't think an argument should be built that he should be punished because he is a big man's son. Remember the commentary from 8 months ago.
Sanket, I would like to remind you that 7 months back or 8 months back, when you and I had debated on the same issue, I had categorically mentioned that he is innocent until proven guilty. If you remember, it was a debate along with Mr. Kishore Tiwari. I had specifically mentioned about it. We never alleged. And as stated right now, it was Mr. Nawab Malik who used to call for the press conference, and the media trial was done by him, not by the BJP. BJP never called for a press conference or stated anything about Mr. Aryan Khan. It was always Mr. Nawab Malik. And to
So,
that,
Mr. Shetty, as it turns out, today, whatever Mr. Nawab Malik was saying about Samir Wankhede.
That record, Sanket, you have my all the channels.
No, I am not aware. You are a. You may have exhibited great wisdom, Mr. Shetty.
Video and mention that I have stated this kind of. I have uttered such kind of words against Mr. Aryan
Mr.
Khan.
Shetty.
I always stated that the authorities should be allowed to function.
Mr. Shetty, we bow to your wisdom. But the point is, we are not talking about Mr. Shetty, the individual. We are talking about the situation. Look at the type of comments that were made back then, even by senior BJP leaders. That just because he is a son of a very tall man.
Allegation, no. Sanket,
should he be left off the hook?
Yeah, of course, why not? See, a crime is a crime. If at all anybody from our party must have spoken, I stand by that statement even today. So no person should be left just because he is somebody's son or anything.
Yeah, but no person should be punished just because he is the son of a superstar.
Let the law take its own.
Mr. Shetty, the reverse of this is also true, no?
We always said, let us trust the authorities.
Mahesh
let the NCP do its job.
Mr. Mahesh, the chief spokesperson of the NCP, I want to bring you in. An allegation has been made, Mr. Mahesh, that it was Mr. Nawab Malik who politicized this entire matter.
Good evening, Sanketji and all panelists. Let me tell you here that had Nawab Malik not exposed the entire fake raid which was done on the Cordelia cruise, none of this would have come to light. So Nawab Malik termed the entire fake search or fake raid as Farjiwada. You know how it started? It started with one Manish Bhanushali, who was identified as a witness, and later on we realized that he is very close to some people in BJP. The other witness, KP Gosavi, he tweeted his picture with Aryan Khan and trying to claim that he is somebody from the NCB, which the NCB didn't, and that actually got our antennas running to source for more information, like who are these people, who's KP Gosavi and who's Manish Bhanushali. And that's exactly how our internal investigation, Mr. Nawab Malik, he started his own investigation, and he realized that the entire raid was a Farjiwada. See, they have to admit three things. What Mr. S.N. Pradhan has said, that no drugs were found, okay, no videography of the search, and finally clubbing of all the accused under invoking the same charges. So all these things clearly indicate, and what we hear, that there was some malified intention, some motivation to frame these kind of people. So this is exactly what has happened. And had Nawab Malik not taken this stand, I don't know what would have happened. He probably would have gone scot-free.
No, but then here is the thing. The NCB even now has not found evidence against 6 of the people who were arrested. There are many others who continue to remain arrested. They've been charge sheeted, not arrested. They've been charge sheeted in this particular case. There are others also. So they have not found evidence on a few people of the many who were arrested.
Whatever is the truth will come out. Like we have maintained, the entire search, the entire raid on the Cordelia cruise was a fraud. It was a Farjiwada. Nawab Malik had
the biggest question over here is, Akash, it is very easy. It is very easy to say that this was Farjiwada and all. I want to know the motive. Obviously, the motive cannot be just one Mr. Samir Wankhede's enterprise, personal enterprise, that I want to do this because today I want to arrest Aryan Khan. It cannot be his individual enterprise. It is very difficult to believe this. Akash.
Sanket, obviously one doesn't know the internal workings of any party or what is happening. One can only say and watch from the sidelines and shake their head in disbelief when justice and the cause of justice is being discussed here. I wonder what Manish Bhanushali is in the party at this point of time. I would have really liked you to actually get Mr. Bhanushali, who very proudly called himself vice president of a party, and then said that I'm just helping the investigative agencies in this raid. So to say that this was a proper raid with proper investigation, with proper movement, in the history of India, perhaps you've never had a party functionary, sort of shady underworld guy, leading the people into arrest and taking them and walking in and out of the NCB office. It's a sham. It's a shame what happened in the name of justice. And I wish, Sanket, that there was some sort of punishment in the sense of actual making sure that this doesn't happen again. Sadly, Sanket, please don't forget, and yes, you talked about the media. This has happened before also. We know what happened with the Sushant Singh case. We know what happened to Riya. Now it has happened to Aryan, and tomorrow it will happen again. And the same players will come ahead and make the media tamasha all over again. People will lap it up. So let's not fool ourselves. This was a well-planned ploy. It went wrong disastrously. That's a separate story. Thank God.
They've had to. So you're basically saying that Mr. Wankhede could very well be a fall guy, who could not deliver the goods.
You don't have to have entire political science, degrees to know that this couldn't be just one person's execution or thought process.
That's exactly the question I'm asking. It can't be an individual's enterprise. Priyanka Chaturvedi, Member Parliament of the Shiv Sena, is also with us. Ms. Chaturvedi, now that the NCB says that we don't have enough material evidence, and we'd also admit that we have gone wrong, and we'll take departmental inquiry. I want to ask you this question. Would you believe that this was an individual's enterprise only? Only Mr. Wankhede was interested in doing this? Without any backing, any support?
Today, NCB stands in a position which is unenviable. They stand absolutely exposed. They stand absolutely compromised. And it has again proved that all the central agencies are being used by the central government to hit out or to try and create problems in the state governments where they are not in power. They have yet again proved that. From day one of this entire arrest and the entire fiasco, and I wouldn't say he's the only man, he was the PR-driven modern-day Singhams backed by various other news media channels, which were putting out news stories which were leaked by him, which was obvious. Any intelligent person in their right mind would be able to say that. And I spoke very vociferously then, because being a mother of a young son myself, I can totally imagine what the child would have gone through, what the family was going through, on the basis of one man's intent to hate out at such families. So, I mean, for Aryan Khan, it became a case of being a celebrity child who was just about to begin his career and having to face all the, media scrutiny, as well as the entire social media backlash that was coming through one party. And that is the Bharatiya Janata Party. How the one individual was made the modern day Singham was also coming at the back of a lot of support from there. So today the state government also stands vindicated on talking about and exposing what the NCB officers stood for and what NCB has become. And probably they need to introspect where they have got this entire agencies to.
So
lost their independence.
Before I come to you, Kanika Sadanand, as well as Mr. Aniket Nikam, just a quick word from Mr. Shetty. Mr. Shetty, so as you have seen that many people over here, number one, they cannot believe that this is just Mr. Wankhede is doing. Who was Mr. Bhanushali? Was he not associated with the BJP? What was he doing inside the NCB office? It smacked of a political motive, people say, right from that point. And you say we had nothing to do with it.
See, first of all, Sanket,
so if there has to be an inquiry, why should this angle not be probed, a political angle?
Before, during
Forget
those
an inquiry, there won't even be an apology
back also,
from the
when I specifically mentioned that such kind of punches are being brought irrespective of the political affiliations they have. I know many people from Congress and Shiv Sena or any other NCP people, they have been punches on various occasions. I can give that list of that.
No,
Number
what?
two,
There have been what? Punches? What punches?
see, these are the individual
Witness.
punches. They have been
The
taken
ones
into
who
confidence
are
and
signing
brought.
the punchnamas.
The witness.
Yeah,
The
they are
witness, the ones who
witness.
signed
So
the
let us
punchnamas.
not go into that. So now that was a kind of allegation leveled by Mr. Nawab Malik. Now I will.
Well, let's not get into
I will-
anything. By the way, Mr. Nawab Malik exposed
Let me complete.
single-handedly.
Priyanka,
Mr.
let
Nawab
me
Malik
complete.
single-handedly
Priyanka, I did not
exposed what this
interject when
entire
you spoke.
conspiracy was. I'm sorry, I won't allow him to complete because they do not
Mr.
stand. No, I can't allow him to complete.
See, let
Because
the
of
NCP
the
do.
one
Now
Nawab
you are-
Malik today
you are
who is
alleging-
facing
you
arrest
are-
because of the central
Mr.
agencies.
Nawab Malik, it was
He
never a
exposed
media
y'all. He
trial by the
exposed y'all.
BJP. Priyanka, let me make it clear, it was never a trial by BJP. It was always
Come
a
on.
trial by
Come
Mr.
on.
Nawab
Please
Malik,
go
who
on
used to
social
always
media,
have a press
Mr.
conference.
It
It
Mr.
was always a
Shetty,
press conference
Mr.
held by
Fadnavis
Mr.
had a
Nawab Malik
press
early in the
conference.
morning.
Okay, Kanika
What are
Sadanan
you
wants to come in.
Apart from
Kanika
that,
Sadanan wants to come
Sanket,
in.
let me complete.
She
Let
wants to
me
say something.
complete.
You
No,
are
let me
saying that the
complete.
BJP
Sanket,
had nothing to do with this.
The allegation, no, this is, she's
Miss
not.
Kanika
Mr.
Sadanan.
Shetty,
Priyanka is
please.
contradicting
Mr.
his own
Mr. Shetty, may I
Miss
please
Kanika
speak?
Sadanan,
She is
please.
saying, Priyanka is contradicting her own words. She is saying
Mr.
she leveled an
Shetty,
allegation on the
one
NCB,
moment. Kanika
and today
Sadanan
it is
wants
the-
to tell
it is
us
the same NCB which
where
has given
you are
clean
saying
sheet.
BJP had to do nothing with this. Kanika Sadanan.
Mr. Shetty,
Please come.
Mr. Fadnavis, senior leader of BJP, had a press conference, if you remember, or have you forgotten? He had a press conference, and he said that let the agency do their job, the truth will prevail. And fortunately for Aryan Khan, today the truth has prevailed, and you all have mud on your face. And besides this, there was media trolling Aryan Khan, projecting Mr. Wankhede as the blue-eyed boy, and there were vox pops going on in some channels talking about how great Mr. Samir Wankhede, and who was backing it? Who was backing that gentleman? It was the center. And please, Mr. Shetty, don't get amnesia about this. Mr. Fadnavis had a proper press conference. And thank you to Mr. Nawab Malik. Unfortunately, now he's being targeted by the ED, which is again a central agency. There was no proper investigation. There was no proper collection of evidence. There was no blood test. There was media when this whole raid was taking place. The punches were exposed in front of the media. This kind of thing never happens in an investigation like this.
Okay.
When you are talking about
Okay,
fighting
before
against
Mr.
drug
Shetty
cartels-
responds, I have to go to Mr. Aniket Nikam also. Mr. Nikam, what is your view? Do you think that this is a case where obviously whatever was done, this faulty investigation, bad investigation, wrong investigation, targeted investigation, was done only by one man, or was there an ecosystem working?
Sanket, I wouldn't comment on any political issues, but let me tell you as a criminal lawyer, in 1990s, in the case of Joginder Kumar, Supreme Court had categorically said that the existence of power to arrest is one thing, but the justification for exercise of it is quite another. Every police officer, and I'm not talking about narcotics division, every police officer in this country, before effecting an arrest, must ask a question to himself: why arrest? Is it really necessary? Is it so that without arresting this person, the investigation cannot proceed even an inch ahead? Only if these questions are answered, then they must proceed in arresting an accused, because our law of land is arrest is an exception. Bail is the rule, jail is an exception. Now, in situations like this, when there is nothing that is found on the person, when there is no evidence of he having consumed any narcotic substance, the investigating agency ideally ought to have avoided to arrest him. But however, at the same time, if the agency feels that arrest is necessary for whatever reasons, they must justify this arrest. 8 months down the line, now the investigating agency is saying that 8 months ago we really had no substance against him, yet we went ahead and arrested him, is something that does not go ahead, that does not go along with the settled legal principles.
Then we
that
come
are
to a
laid down in
larger
our
issue,
country.
which was touched upon by Mr. Rohatgi also, where he says that
Sanket.
you have to have a provision in
Right.
the law where you punish the officer
Yes.
as well.
Right.
Otherwise,
Not
people
only
will
that,
continue with their
Sanket,
investigation.
let me give you one more
Not
example.
only that,
Sanket,
Sanket,
allow me.
Whatever their motive be, and then after 8 months or
Sanket,
10 months later,
Sanket, we are discussing this case. We are discussing this case because this man, Mr. Aryan Khan, is a son of a of a Bollywood superstar.
Exactly.
I
What
have
about
been
the others?
appearing in cases
I
who
agree with you.
who belong to lower strata. Sanket, give me 10 seconds. Where police have arrested them, and when they were produced for remand, police themselves sought judicial custody. So what was the need to arrest if you did not need any custodial interrogation? So I have seen cases where police are extremely jubilant in arresting an individual. But
Okay,
when they are
Kanika
produced
San,
before
before
the
I
court,
come to you,
the
Priyanka
police themselves
Chaturvedi, do
seek
you
judicial
feel that
custody.
there must be a change in the law to
Yes.
affect arrest or action or some sort of a punishment against those cops or those officers who willfully and wrongfully carry out investigations? Otherwise, it's very easy. No, you carry out an investigation 10, 15 months later or 2 years later, say, sorry, we found nothing. You can go home.
All I'd say is you do not need another law. What you need is some kind of accountability and transparency in governance. We are seeing how bureaucrats are totally misusing their power. We are seeing how ED officials are bending at the back of pleasing the central government, whether it's ED, CBI, IT, etc. There needs to be some sort of accountability. And last but not the least, I mean, it should be a given that if an investigation has been done incorrectly, there has to be some accountability set in for those officers who were working out of turn or were working for their own personal glory or were working at the behest of a political party. I don't even say the central government. They're working at the behest of a political party.
Niranjan Shetty, before you answer that question, Akash Banerjee wanted to come in. Yes, Akash.
Yeah, I have two very quick points. First and foremost, I'd like to ask Mr. Shetty, is Mr. Manish Bhanushali still part of the BJP? Because I'm scrolling his Twitter account and he's waving the flag, putting party retweets, talking about the party. So first and foremost, I would like to know if he's still part of the BJP. Then I'll come to the second point.
Mr. Shetty?
First of all, Mr. Akash, I do not know who's Mr. Bhanushali, and he may be at a lower rank of the our party or anything. So I do not, but that does not mean that I am, affirming his position in the BJP. Apart from that, I would like to respond to what Priyanka Chaturvedi mentioned. See, now she alleged about the kind of action been taken by the central agency. If that was the case, then the NCP would have never given a clean sheet. So we would have hounded him once again and made it a point that he is till today guilty of possession also of this. Having said that, let me complete. Priyanka, you cannot level such kind of allegation that just because
we are very grateful.
Now the NCP is clean. See, my stand was always clear. Mr. Sanket knows. I always told 7 months back also, let the authorities do their work. So now today the authorities have done the work.
Very convenient, no. That's where the point. The process has become the punishment.
It was yours.
Akash, your second point quickly. Running out of time.
Mr. Shetty, first and foremost, I think on behalf of many people who dare to speak out even today, on the behalf of many people who dare to speak out even today, thank you so much for letting us know that at least the system can work sometimes. The only problem is I don't think how many people can afford a lawyer, which is 25 lakh rupees a day. So that continues to be a bit of a problem. My second question to you is very
one by one, please, Mr. Shetty, one by one.
Mr. Shetty,
Mr. attitude.
Mr. Shetty, this is not one of those other channels you go to.
One by one. Mr. Shetty, this is a debate show, not a TED talk. Please, one by one. Yeah.
What is his intolerance to other people's views, Mr. Shetty? Why are you proving it again and again? Stop it. Let Mr. Banerjee speak.
Mr. Shetty, the other point that I wanted to ask you is that first and foremost, you are saying you don't know anything about this Bhanushali chap, which is a shame because he was the one who led the whole arrest. He's the one who got everybody into the NCB. Okay, you don't know. What I wanted to ask you, sir, is that is the BJP going to do anything about the sinking reputation of the media, which has shrunk further when you had this kind of leak, when people were being attacked, when leaks were happening, when media channels had already declared somebody as guilty, the person was being cooked on a daily basis. I don't even want to take those dirty names and the dirty quotes. Yeah. They are available on social media. They're deleting it very fast. We are copying it. We'll put it out on our YouTube channel. But my question to you, sir, is do you think it represents well for a democratic country, which we hope to be still, that this sort of media trial happens and the government is allowing it and it's not doing anything to stop it also?
Are you trying to blame the BJP for doing the media trial? It was the media who has taken into account.
So you were saying you have no control over the media, sir. Mr. Shetty, you are saying you have no control over the media. It's good to
Why
know.
don't you start pulling out your ads from these media channels to show that you
one by one,
really care?
very
of his arrest. So that is what Mr.
very over
Aniket
on
Nikam
time.
said.
One by one,
Had
quick
he
closing
not
comments.
been
Priyanka Chaturvedi and Kanika Sadana. 30
Had he
seconds,
not
please.
been the son of a
Running out of time.
the media would have never taken
Can I
the
start?
cognizance
Mr.
of his
Shetty,
arrest.
This is
Mr.
the
Shetty,
wrong day
your
for
time is up.
you to be on television channels and defending the Bharatiya Janata Party and trying to say that, oh, listen, because central agencies are so independent, they managed to give him a clean sheet. So since you all are so, we should all bow down in gratitude for allowing agencies to work. I would also request you now through your channel, Sanket, that the closure report first, Sushant Singh Rajput's suicide case should be out soon too.
We are going
so
to
that
debate that further.
CBI also stands exposed to what.
Yes, we are going to debate that further.
May I please-
Completely
May I
running out of
please-
time. 10 seconds, Miss
put your
Kanika
counsel
Sadana.
and how he perceives
Yes.
the matter.
Okay, Mr. Shetty,
We've got
enough
two
with your
more
verbal
interviews
diarrhea,
waiting,
please. Thank
please.
you so
Yes.
much.
Yeah.
I just want to say one last point, Sanket, here, that under a big umbrella, the NDPS Act and the investigators or the investigative agencies, they choose to put the person in jail. And the judges also, because its drug is such a huge menace, they somehow succumb to that. So I want to say that there has to be fine tuning of this act.
Okay. We are going to debate this further. And the point that Priyanka Chaturvedi made, what about the Sushant Singh Rajput case? That's an interesting point. We'll talk about this. As far as credibility is concerned and restoring of credibility is concerned, these agencies and a section of the media has a lot to answer today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Some comments on the Coup app as well, where Paran says, Aryan Khan case has many loopholes from the very first day and definitely seems like a politically motivated agenda against Shah Rukh Khan. Rohit Kapoor says, what about the sleepless nights he has spent in jail? We're taking a short break at this moment. When we come back, we'll speak to that legal who was the mind behind getting Aryan Khan bail, Mr. Ryan Karanjawala. Also, we speak to the Director General of the Narcotics Control Bureau and ask him those pointed, tough questions. What about the credibility of his organization? Back in a moment. So we have the DG of NCB, the Director General of the Narcotics Control Bureau, Mr. S.N. Pradhan. This is a hybrid interview. Mr. Pradhan, thank you very much for joining us. मेरा सबसे पहला सवाल ऐसे है प्रधान साहब, आपका हमने तमाम बार इंटरव्यू किया है. जब आप बतौर NDRF कोई विपदा आ जाती थी, उस पर आप बताते थे हमको कि किस तरीके से. आज आपको लगता है, ये मैं हल्के से एक सवाल से शुरू करना चाहता हूं. Do you think that there is a big disaster in the NCB which you have to manage now? A disaster as far as the reputation of NCB is concerned.
Already taken care of any possible disasters or any potential disasters. And just like in NDRF, I was the first mover even before the disaster unfolded. I think we have made the first move even before any further damage to NCB's credibility could have been done. So I think we have taken the right decision and on time. And these are part of the learning curve of an institution. And I don't balk at the prospect of admitting that when you make mistakes or if there are some issues that have to be handled within the department, they have been handled. It is the rarest of rare case that an SIT is formed over and above the zonal director's mandate. So we formed that SIT because we were constrained to form that SIT, obviously. And we have taken the decision to carry out an objective investigation. And on the settled principles of jurisprudence, that is proof beyond reasonable doubt. Let me share with you that NDPS Act may be a stringent act, but the courts have very scrupulously observed that the principle of proof beyond reasonable doubt has to be underlined. It cannot be preponderance of probability. And so we have stuck to that, and wherever we have found proof, physical proof, we have charge sheeted. Where we have not, for whatever reasons, we have not charge sheeted.
मेरा अगला सवाल हिंदी में होगा प्रधान साहब. आप कहते हैं और ये मानना पड़ेगा, ये काबिले तारीफ है कि एनसीबी नारकोटिक्स कंट्रोल ब्यूरो ने एक तरीके से अपनी एक खामी मानी है और आपने इसका जिक्र भी किया अपने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में. आपको नहीं लगता है कि आइंदा से आगे से जब इन्वेस्टिगेशन होगा तो फिर सवाल उठाए जाएंगे एनसीबी की क्रेडिबिलिटी पर कि ये किस तरीके से जोनल लेवल पर इन्वेस्टिगेशन हो रहा था? आप रेंज देखिए, आप कह रहे हैं कि कोई सबूत नहीं है और वहां पर जोनल लेवल पे ये कहा जा रहा था कि आर्यन खान इंटरनेशनल ड्रग सिंडिकेट का हिस्सा हो सकता है जिस वजह से उसको बेल ना दी जाए। इतना वेरिएशन।
देखिए, ये अगर आप पुलिसिंग को देखते समझते हैं तो ये वेरिएशन होने की गुंजाइश रहती है, क्योंकि जो इनिशियल इन्वेस्टिगेटर होता है या इनिशियल इन्वेस्टिगेशन जिस चार्ज पर होता है वो एक उसमें थोड़ी सी स्पेकुलेटिव एस्पेक्ट भी रहती है कि हाँ आगे प्रूफ मिल सकता है, ऐसा कुछ इंगित हो रहा है, ऐसा कुछ इंडिकेशन है. So I would not go by that. I would go by what is the subsequent investigation immediately after the initial charges appear to be, the plausibility of those potential charges. Potential charges is not in our business. Our business is to find the exact charge that can be made out. So I do not think that, I think we have done a course correction and we are very sanguine about it. हम लोगों को कोई
admit this is a course
इसके लिए
correction.
चिंता
आप
नहीं
मानते
है
हैं
कि
इस बात
हम बिल्कुल, और आगे भी अगर जरूरत पड़ेगी तो कोर्स करेक्शन होगा, बिकॉज दैट इज द रोल ऑफ अ प्रोफेशनल एजेंसी. हम लोगों को इसमें मानने में कहाँ सोचने की जरूरत है. हम लोगों को वी शुड लुक इनटू आवर ओन वर्किंग एज मच एज वी लुक इनटू द क्रिमिनल्स एंड देयर नेटवर्क्स.
प्रधान साहब, आप ये चीज मानेंगे कि पहले गिरफ्तारी हुई, फर्स्ट देयर वाज एन अरेस्ट इन दिस केस एंड देन चार्जेस वर पुट एज एन आफ्टर थॉट. ये एक आरोप लगाया एनसीबी पर कि बाद में सोच के जबरदस्ती जेल में और टाइम तक रखने के लिए मोर चार्जेस वर पुट इन एज एन आफ्टर थॉट.
No, Sanket, I don't agree with that. Every police case will seem like that to a non-policeman, but that is not the case. There was evidence, there was initial prima facie evidence that there was a Cordelia cruise where people were taking drugs, and you can see that out of 20, a preponderant number, 14 were actually found in possession of drugs. So it is not as if there was nothing there. So it was not a tabula rasa where the NCB was painting stories. So there was some cause of action, but eventually the truth has come out, I believe. So you should, I think, focus on what has been done instead of what could have been done or what could not have been. What could have been
प्रधान साहब,
avoided.
मैं क्यों पूछ रहा हूं
Yes, we
ये?
also take cognizance of that.
जी बिल्कुल, मैं ये सवाल क्यों पूछ रहा हूं क्योंकि कई बार ये चीज बोली गई है कि इस पूरे मामले में जो प्रक्रिया है वही सजा थी. द प्रोसेस इटसेल्फ वाज द पनिशमेंट. आपको लगता है कि ये हुआ है यहां पर?
That is not as per any plan of NCB, if that is what you are hinting at. It is not a plan of NCB to keep somebody in jail. That is not within the rights of NCB also. But the point is that, yes, sometimes in the system, a person who is ultimately found to be not worthy of charge sheet may also have to undergo some kind of a jail time. I think it is one of those, you can say, necessary evils of the system. And it is not the first one that a certain person has gone through this, but then ultimately the fairness should come out, and I think that is what has happened in this.
प्रधान साहब, वानखेड़े जी जो हैं, समीर वानखेड़े, उनके खिलाफ अब एक्शन लेने की बात की जा रही है. केंद्र सरकार के सूत्रों से ये जानकारी आई है. कितना जरूरी है एक्शन लेना और डिपार्टमेंटल इंक्वायरी होना कि आगे ये ना हो, कि एक डेटरेंट बने, कहीं आदत ना पड़ जाए लोगों को कि वो इस तरीके से केसेस रजिस्टर करें?
देखिए, आपने देखा होगा कि आर्यन खान का जो मैटर शुरू हुआ उसके तुरंत बाद कुछ ही दिनों में एनसीबी ने स्वतः सुओ मोटो कार्रवाई का निर्देश दिया. मैंने अपने कलम से कार्रवाई का निर्देश दिया, और इसलिए नहीं दिया कि आई एम द ओनली राइटियस पर्सन इन दिस वर्ल्ड. मैंने इसलिए दिया कि इट वॉज अ क्वेश्चन ऑफ एनसीबीज क्रेडिबिलिटी. तो मैं नहीं भी करता, लेकिन इसकी ज़रूरत इसलिए थी क्योंकि हम लोगों को ऐसा लगा कि देयर इज समथिंग अमिस, एंड इफ वी आर मिसिंग समथिंग देन वी मस्ट स्क्रूटनाइज इट क्लोजली एंड फ्रॉम द हेडक्वार्टर्स. और अगर कार्रवाई की बात अगर आ रही है तो वो कार्रवाई लॉजिकल कंक्लूजन के आधार पर होगा. मैं अभी इस पर टिप्पणी नहीं करना चाहूँगा. कहाँ से क्या अनाउंसमेंट हुआ है ये मैं जानता नहीं हूँ, लेकिन ये सफिशिएंट है मेरा कहना कि उसी वक्त कार्रवाई के लिए हम लोगों ने मूव किया था कि भाई इसमें एसआईटी टेक ओवर करेगा अलग, लेकिन जो विजिलेंस एस्पेक्ट है इस पर अलग से इंक्वायरी बैठाई गई और वो इंक्वायरी लगभग खत्म होने के कगार पर है।
मेरा आखिरी सवाल मिस्टर प्रधान, आई वांट टू आस्क यू, आपने ये बोला कि इस पर ध्यान मत दीजिए कि जो अब तक हुआ है ये देखिए कि हम क्या कर रहे हैं। मेरा ये कहना है, लर्निंग फ्रॉम द पास्ट, हाउ कैन यू इंश्योर दैट द क्रेडिबिलिटी ऑफ एनसीबी इज इंटैक्ट और आगे से ऐसी कोई जांच नहीं होगी जिसमें लोग इस तरीके से संदेह प्रकट करें और उसमें दोष साफ हो। आप देखिए, एक प्राइवेट डिटेक्टिव अंदर जाकर के सेल्फी खींच रहा है, जिस तरीके से पूरा प्रकरण हुआ वो सबके सामने था, किसी से छुपा नहीं था। आप खुद मान रहे हैं कि लैप्सेस हैं, तो आप क्या, हाउ विल यू लाइक टू अश्योर द पीपल दैट द एनसीबी's credibility is intact when it carries out an investigation? What steps will you take?
देखिए, हम लोगों ने कुछ इंटरनल प्रोसेसेस हम लोगों ने शुरू किए हैं। अव्वल तो सबसे पहली बात मैं ये बता दूं कि मैंने अंदर डायरेक्टिव इशू किया है कि देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी टेकिंग ओवर ऑफ स्मॉल केसेस, पुड़िया बेस्ड केसेस। यू नो, वी आर हियर इन द बिजनेस ऑफ अनअर्थिंग नेटवर्क्स व्हिच आर पैन इंडिया और इंटरनेशनल। वी आर नॉट इन द बिजनेस ऑफ चेजिंग पान वाला drug peddlers. That the state police can do in any case. Just as a matter of factual endorsement, let me tell you that 97% of the drug seizures are done by state police, and the balance 3% is divided between NCB, DRI, customs, etc. So we are not in the business of chasing drug peddlers. We are in the business of unearthing networks which affect national security and such. And the second, the point that you mentioned about learning the lesson, I think there has been enough evidence of deterrence now, and people will think twice. Even my own officers and staff down below will think twice, because I have not only said that only such cases will be taken which have a evidential network value or national security implication. So if somebody defies this order of the headquarters and carries on with some petty cases, obviously he'll be proceeded against. Similarly, I hope the cases that are now in focus, the evidence will promote there is a lot of deterrence on the basis of this, and already action has started. Action has been taken by against some recalcitrant officers. So I hope that serves as a deterrence. I cannot guarantee that all the 1100, 1200 staff will be absolutely correct and righteous and beyond reproach, but I hope there is sufficient deterrence now.
It's so good to hear this. प्रधान साहब, हमारे जो हिंदी के दर्शक हैं जो कि ये लाइव ब्रॉडकास्ट देख रहे हैं, मैं उनके सहूलियत के लिए आपसे गुजारिश करूंगा कि ये बात अगर दोहरा सकें आप हिंदी में। आप कह रहे हैं कि एनसीबी का काम ये नहीं है कि 1 ग्राम 2 ग्राम पर संग्राम करें, एनसीबी का काम है कि बड़े बड़े नेटवर्क को अनर्थ करें। और आपको लगता है एनसीबी इस तरीके के काम पर उतर गया था जो कि उनका मुख्य काम भी नहीं था, और इसके लिए आप क्या कर रहे हैं?
बिल्कुल दीगर बात है संकेत जी, मैंने यहाँ से निर्देश जारी किया है, इंटरनल हमारा कम्युनिकेशन भी जारी है कि जब भी हम लोग किसी कांड को टेक ओवर करें या किसी कांड को, किसी इन्वेस्टिगेशन अनुसंधान को अंडरटेक करें, तो उसमें ये गुंजाइश पूरी रहनी चाहिए कि चाहे पुड़िया से शुरू हो लेकिन वो नेटवर्क और बड़े बड़े सिंडिकेट्स तक जाता हो। अगर ऐसा नहीं है तो उसको तत्क्षणात आप लोकल पुलिस को ही वापस कर दें, और वो उनका काम है, वो लोग देख लेंगे। छोटे से बड़े केस पूरा दायरा लोकल पुलिस का है। वैसे भी 97 से 98% जो सीजर होते हैं पूरे देश में नारकोटिक्स के, वो स्टेट पुलिस करती है, बाकी 2 से 3% एनसीबी, डीआरआई, कस्टम्स इत्यादि करते हैं। तो स्पष्ट है कि हमारा काम कोऑर्डिनेशन का है। लॉ एंड ऑर्डर और नारकोटिक्स जो है स्टेट पुलिस का दायरा है, वो कर रहा है। उसको कैसी सुविधा दी जाए और उसको कैसे सहूलियत दिया जाए, उसको कैसे एक्सपर्टीज दी जाए, और उसके ऊपर पैन इंडिया नेशनल इम्प्लीकेशन के, इंटरनेशनल इम्प्लीकेशन के अगर कोई कांड है तो उसको हम लोग टेकअप करें, ताकि एक मिसाल साबित करें कि भाई इस देश को ड्रग के मेनेस से, नेशनल सिक्योरिटी के एंगल से, ऑर्गेनाइज क्राइम के एंगल से कैसे प्रोटेक्ट किया जाए। वो हमारा काम है एज अ फेडरल एजेंसी, ना कि छोट भैया केसेस के पीछे भागना।
ये बहुत बड़ी बात आपने कही है प्रधान साहब। अब उम्मीद करते हैं, आपने ये भी बोला कि आप इस चीज की गारंटी नहीं ले सकते हैं कि इक्का दुक्का लोग क्या करेंगे, लेकिन एक संदेश बहुत स्पष्ट रूप से, अ क्लियर मैसेज शुड गो आउट टू ऑल दोज ऑफिसर्स ऑफ द एनसीबी हु आर लिसनिंग टू यू। डोंट चेज दीज केसेस ऑफ अ फ्यू ग्राम्स, go for the big fish. Do you think that in this context, an NCB's role should be to find out the 21,000 crores worth of drugs seized at the Mundra port and a speedy investigation to unearth what the network was? That should be your priority rather than go after these small-time drug peddlers? Is that what you're saying?
Bilkul, you have hit the nail on the head. Sanket, let me give you an example. Recently, I do not know whether you have noticed, a couple of months ago, we combined with the Indian Navy, no less the Indian Navy, and had an operation in the high seas, almost near or beyond the territorial waters, and unearthed almost 700 kilos of charas and other materials, which was worth again 20,000 to 30,000 crores. Now, this was the first of its kind, but the point is, if we are not fighting against the enemies of the country and the sinister design of drug dealers and syndicates who are out to emasculate the strength of India, we are not doing our business. So that is what we should be. We are a big ticket chasing organization. We should not be in this is the small time action at all.
Well said.
That is for the state police to do, the district police to do. So I have no lack of clarity on this, and that is the clarity I have sought to convey to my staff and officers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pradhan, for saying it out loud and so clearly, defining the role of the NCB, because many people were in doubt as to what the NCB is meant to do. You've so carefully and properly articulated the key result area of an institution like NCB. Hopefully, this will restore the faith in that organization. आपका बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद जो आपने ये जो शब्द बोले और बताया कि NCB का काम क्या है, मुख्य काम क्या है. Mr. Pradhan, thank you very much for joining us. एक छोटे से ब्रेक के लिए अभी रुक रहे हैं.
Thank you so much, Sanket.
All right, joining us right now is Mr. Aryan Khan. Thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for speaking to us. 8 months back, the Narcotics Control Bureau said that Aryan Khan is part of an international drug syndicate, that he will come out, he will influence, the investigation process, he will destroy evidence, he will do all sorts of things, and thus he must be denied bail. At that point, you made an observation by saying, happy with the verdict, but it should have come from the Sessions Court. Mr. Karanjawala, today, 8 months on, this very same investigating agency says that there is nothing on him. How do you look at this case and the role of the NCB?
So, we feel vindicated, but we are not surprised. Because on day one, we had all said that Aryan Khan was an innocent person who was being called guilty. The reason we had pointed out right in the very beginning also, if you recollect, was that this was a case where there were no drugs found on his possession. There was no medical evidence led to say that he had consumed any drugs. Merely because somebody else in the vicinity happened to have some drugs on him doesn't implicate Aryan Khan in any way. And it certainly doesn't bring in the doctrine of conscious possession. So we had on day one said that Aryan Khan is an innocent person. We are not surprised, but we are certainly relieved.
Now, Mr. Karanjawala, I don't know whether you've been able to access or read the press release by the Narcotics Control Bureau. There is para number 3, and I would like to draw your attention, where it says that the SIT of the NCB carried out its investigation in an objective manner, and then they say the touchstone of the principle of proof beyond reasonable doubt has been applied, and then they conclude complaint against 6 persons is not being filed due to lack of sufficient evidence. Do you think that the touchstone of the principle of proof beyond reasonable doubt should have been applied 8 months ago and not now?
Yes, obviously that's what I think. Obviously that's what I think. And I don't think it's a case of beyond reasonable doubt. I think this is a case of insufficient evidence. I think this is a case of no evidence whatsoever.
Mr. Karanjawala, where does this leave investigators and investigating agencies like the Narcotics Control Bureau? Do you think that they have erred at an institutional level and not at an individual level?
Well, I do feel that ultimately what they've said is correct. So while there may have been mishaps along the way and the initial error of judgment may have been there, at least ultimately we are happy that they have agreed with what we said 8 months back.
Mr. Karanjawala, do you feel that in most cases like these, the process itself becomes the punishment? I mean, eventually he has come out, he's cleared, but the process, do you think that the intention, the question over here is of intention, do you think the intention was to make the process the punishment?
I don't know whether the intention was to make the process the punishment, because frankly I can't sort of conjure up what their intention was. But I definitely agree with you that in cases like this, very often the process is the punishment. And I'll give you a personal example. We'd gone across after Aryan got bail to Shah Rukh Khan's house for lunch. He'd been kind enough to call me and my wife across. And we were interacting with 4 of the family members. That's Shah Rukh, his wife Gauri, his son Aryan, of course, and his daughter Suhana. So you could see very clearly, it was a longish lunch spread over 2-3 hours. You could see very clearly that Shah Rukh was very much trying to be the man of the house, keeping the conversation light, trying to keep everyone at ease, and so was Aryan. But both the women were totally distraught. So, I mean, it's obviously these things take a toll, and one always hopes that in such cases, the process should not be the punishment, but unfortunately, inevitably, very often, it ends up being so.
Mr. Karanjawala, what do you have to say about the whole business of using WhatsApp chats to arrive at a conclusion? I mean, there is great dispute over whether this is to be treated as evidence or not. Because I remember 8 months ago also there was lots of argument that yes, this is electronic evidence. Where do you stand on this issue?
Frankly, WhatsApp chats being treated as evidence is a matter of great debate, but by and large the legal opinion is that it should, as far as possible, not be looked at.
Would you like to tell us why, sir? Why do you think that you've arrived at this legal opinion? And what do you have to say about those who say that this is electronic evidence, this is communication?
Very often things are pulled out of context, because very often things are said in communication which are not always the real context. So to take, and while it's okay to, if you're looking at somebody's WhatsApp and say, hey, yesterday you and I fixed up a movie and today you're denying that we went to a movie together, that's okay. That's one way of looking at it. But when you're looking at criminal law, a much harder yardstick has to be applied.
Mr. Karanjawala, there's a very important point that through the course of our interview with the DG or the Director General of the Narcotics Control Bureau, that important point was, what exactly should be the role of the NCB? Should they be looking at, a few grams of drugs? Should they go after individuals, or should they go after syndicates? Do you feel that it will serve well for an institution like NCB to concentrate on ending the nexus and unearthing a syndicate rather than going after individuals, because that's where the problem begins. You're unearthing nothing.
So why are institutions like this set up? Institutions like this are set up with one and one purpose only, that as far as possible you try to curtail the usage of drugs in the country. Now, if you try to follow each small example of an individual who's got caught with 1 gram on him and you used it for personal consumption, then you're not going to meet your purpose. The real function of an institution like this should always be to go after the large syndicates and quash it. It's when you concentrate your effort and when you focus on what is actually needed to be done that you achieve a purpose. Otherwise, you'll just get lost in the crowd.
All right, Mr. Karanjawala, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.